Out here, deep in the pines and saw palmetto of Central Florida, the wilderness is keeping a secret. 100 years ago, this wasn't empty forest. This was a town, a place called Orleans, where families built homes, planted groves, and bet their future on the sweet promise of orange blossoms and railroad lines. And then winter came. Not the kind we know today, but a cold so deep it cracked bark, killed roots, and erased entire communities from the map. Today, we're searching for what's left of Orleans, a town undone by frost, and remembered only by a small, overgrown cemetery hidden in the woods. Settled sometime in the mid-1880s, Orleans was one of many small communities carved out of Florida's interior during the citrus boom. It wasn't large, just a handful of families at first. But like so many towns of its time, it was built on hope, hard work, and the belief that land would provide. By the late 1880s, dozens of people called this place home, possibly nearing 100 at its peak. Life revolved around two things: farming and citrus. In the late 19th century, citrus was Florida's economic engine. Groves like the ones that surrounded Orleans were feeding a massive national demand. For towns like this, citrus wasn't just a crop, it was survival. And when crops failed, many turned to another industry hidden in these woods: turpentine. All through this forest, you can still find fragments of Herty cups, small clay pots once used to collect pine resin. Quiet, scattered remnants of a system that once worked these trees in careful, deliberate lines. For a brief moment, Orleans was a picture of Florida's pioneering spirit, a community taking root and looking toward a bright future. They had no idea it was all about to end. The end came with the winter of 1894 to 1895, what Florida history simply calls the Great Freeze. It wasn't just one cold night. It was a devastating 1-2 punch. The first freeze hit in December 1894, sending temperatures plunging into the teens. It froze the fruit solid on the branches, but left the trees alive. Then came the illusion of recovery. A warm spell followed. The trees, fooled by the sun, pushed out new growth. And that's what made the second freeze so catastrophic. In February 1895, an even more brutal cold swept across the state. This time, the sap froze inside the trees. Bark split open, entire groves, some decades old, were destroyed in days. Before the freeze, Florida produced up to 6 million boxes of citrus a year. Afterward, that number collapsed to just 100,000. For small communities like Orleans, this wasn't a setback, it was extinction. And while the freeze was the final blow, life here was already fragile. Disease, isolation, and limited resources were constant realities. Illnesses like influenza could move quickly through communities like this. By 1898, the post office had closed, and Orleans was already slipping into silence. Today, Orleans lies deep within the Citrus Tract of the Withlacoochee State Forest. There are no signs, no marked trails. Finding it means studying old maps and then stepping off the path. The forest doesn't give this place up easily. You don't just walk into Orleans. You have to read it. And slowly, the land starts to respond. Beneath our feet, something changes. Crushed shell, packed stone. This wasn't just a trail. This was a road built to carry weight. And then, a single post. Not a tree, not random, placed. A quiet reminder that this wasn't wilderness. It was organized, measured, lived in. At first, it feels like stepping back in time. But then, something shifts. Plastic from a shotgun shell, rusted metal, scrap wood dragged in and left behind. This isn't just history. This is habit. The kind that comes and goes and never cleans up after itself. And then, the ground flashes orange. Fragments. Everywhere. Not random. Not natural. Herty cups. Pieces of an industry that once carved order into these woods. Now scattered, broken, and half buried beneath a younger forest that doesn't match the story beneath it. The trees here look too young, and that's what makes it strange. Because the ground is telling a story the forest no longer reflects. This place wasn't just abandoned. It was erased and then quietly reused. As we move deeper, the clues start stacking. Old road lines, shifts in elevation, patterns you only see if you slow down. And then something else. Ceramic, glass, fragments of bottles and cans and everyday objects, not scattered at random, concentrated. This isn't debris, this is a dump site, the kind every homestead had, just beyond the edge of daily life. Which means we're not just near Orleans anymore, we're standing where someone lived, where meals were cooked, where bottles were emptied, where ordinary days unfolded right up until they didn't. And then, shells, clusters of them, broken, crushed, mixed into the soil. Meals, gathered, cooked, eaten, and then discarded. A reminder that out here, far from towns, far from stores, people weren't just surviving, they were adapting. And in Florida, shell sites like this sometimes go back even further, long before towns like Orleans ever existed. Which makes you wonder, how many stories are layered into this same patch of ground? Even now, these roads are still in use, not by people, but by something that knows these woods far better than we do. And then, just like that, movement. Fast, direct, coming straight down the old road. For a second, it feels like something big is charging toward us. Turns out, it's just the largest squirrel I've ever seen in my entire life. After more than an hour of hiking, something finally appears. Not a ruin exactly, a survivor. A large brick cistern partially hidden in the brush, built to collect and store water. Carefully constructed, intentional, proof that someone planned to live here, not just pass through. And then, another one. Different construction, different design, which raises a question. How many people were living out here? Because you don't build something like this unless you plan to stay. And around it, ceramics, glass, fragments of daily life, water, living space, waste. The outline of a home still etched into the forest floor. And then through the trees, a fence. We've found it. The Orleans Township Cemetery, a small square of land surrounded by forest, holding what's left of an entire community. Inside, a modern marker reads, "In memory of these lost souls buried here, known but to God." And standing here, you feel the weight of that. Because this isn't just a cemetery, it's everything that remains. The stones are worn, some names erased completely, others heartbreakingly clear. Children, infants, lives that barely had time to begin. These aren't just markers. They're the final record of a town that disappeared. And then, just outside the fence, something unexpected. A simple cross, metal, plain, unmarked, not as old as the others. It feels placed, like someone came back. Maybe they didn't know the name. Maybe the stone was gone. But they knew someone was here, and they refused to let that place go unmarked. In a cemetery where so many names have been lost, this might be the most human thing we've found. Standing here, you realize how fragile our mark on the world really is. A century ago, this was a place of hope, built on sunshine, citrus, and the belief that tomorrow would come. All it took was one winter to undo it all. What's left now is scattered across the forest, fragments of industry, traces of daily life, and the names of people who refused to disappear completely. Orleans is gone. No buildings, no streets, no voices left in the air. But not everything vanished, because out here in this quiet square of earth, the people remain. And as long as someone is willing to walk these woods, read these signs, and tell their story, this town is only forgotten, not lost.